Now we did the same thing. We birthed our second child at home, and my husband had to run around for getting the birth certificate. Now, the people who function in the system, for them, home birth was unheard of. And the number of challenges that my husband had to go through just to get a little certificate, which is super easy if one follows the format of the process that is given by the government, it's rather easy. However,
This is the Birth Agni podcast, the fire that brings us alive, that burns myths and opens a channel of authentic natural birth stories. This show debunks the many myths of the medicalized births, showcases the plethora of choices a pregnant couple can make to embark on their empowered birth journey. I'm Divya Kapoor, a certified birth and lactation counselor and an aspiring traditional birth attendant. Let's get the flames blazing high. The final part of the three-part series, this episode with Sanjana Krishnan, a political scientist with nature and regeneration at her core as her passion, is about the politics of birth, deeply knitted in its social and cultural fabric. Part 1 and 2 are episode 102 and 103, which focus on Sanjana's birth stories both time around. And a lot of it is referenced back, so it's best if you go ahead and listen to that first if you haven't. Another episode where we dig into government policies is with public health researcher Banin, episode 92, if you'd like to explore. Reminiscing over the making of these three parts, 3 weeks over 6 hours of recording and roughly 24 hours of refining and post production. That is the amount that goes into the making of 3 episodes. And hence, a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts is hugely appreciated in enabling the podcast's free access to its listeners. And a mother I was working with as her childbirth coach educator, who was repeatedly thrown the big baby card at. She came to me with um, the fact that the doctors were saying that she was 3 weeks ahead, she may have gestational diabetes, she had no symptoms at all. She was also told that the placenta will stop working, so she's a high risk mother, she needs to have a surgery. She took classes, refused the system, trusted her body, and learned diligently about the process of birth. I remember her making notes in the classes, asking tons of questions. Even after that, she had a baby boy in an unmedicated birth yesterday. A beautiful blessing to begin this episode on. Also, I'm really grateful to Sanjana in helping co create the concept of this episode. Let's slip now. Also, I forgot to share that the podcast is going to be on a vacation for 2 to 3 weeks, and you will be clearly announced what the dates are very soon after a week or so. I'm so thankful about all the love that you've given to it in all this last 1 year, that it did not take a break. And so we are on a break and we'll come back with better things. Thank you. So, Sanjana, last time in the conversation, somewhere you said everything we do, whether we birth at home, whether we birth in the hospital, whether we have someone in the room, or whether we choose not to have someone in the room, every choice is making us political. So, is everywhere. A lot has already been said. The description of the podcast has the word political in it. Earth is political. And you are a political scientist. So, there's no one better for us to hear or understand this from. What is politics and how does it play out in birth, in the nitty gritties of it all?
so let's define politics. My first class on politics was in 2010 by Professor Kunyaman, who is no longer alive, but he is probably India's best political economist. The way he introduced politics to us was that from the underwear that you choose to the food that you choose to eat, every single thing is a political decision. And from there began my journey into understanding politics. Politics essentially is the study of power, or politics is how power plays itself in everyday life, in understanding human societies. And that can mean politics can be between a mother and a child, a husband and a wife, a shopkeeper and a customer. It informs everything that we do. And birth is definitely political. So, anything we talk about under the sun, under the human, in the human condition, in the framework of human beings, politics inevitably comes in. For instance, right now, as we speak, there is a definitive power dynamics. You are the host. You are leading me into a certain discourse. I am giving you answers based on my understanding. So it's not a bad thing. And that's also
Mm.
something which people miss, that
Yeah.
politics is associated very negatively. I think it's wonderful. And if one is able to understand and see that in their everyday lives, in what we choose for ourselves, it makes us more aware and informed. It's a good tool to understand ourselves better in the context that we live in our surrounding.
And then it makes
Yeah.
me think that this is also linked to culture, to society. But then, how does the politics in birth impact the choice for a woman or the choices that she can or cannot make in different settings?
So let's look at the evolution of the medical industry or the hospital industry. It's not more than 100 years old. It's safe to say that, correct me if I'm wrong, the foundation of which came in with the idea that we are here to save mothers and babies and keep them alive. So our methodology is great because traditional or indigenous means of birthing have caused a lot of maternal and infant mortality. Now, there's no data
Mm.
which is proving this or disproving this. It's based on a hypothesis given by someone at some point in time, and we continue to believe that. And that transition has basically taken power away from the woman, from communities who've birthed in primal ways, who, like we've discussed in the previous two podcasts, it's been an event where women come together. There's men waiting outside to hear the news of what's happening in the birthing space around women. They've given them the privacy, or women have had clear boundaries that men will not enter this space unless asked for. So these social rules were very much there. Now, with the transition into hospitalization and it become industrialized, our bodies have become a product.
Mm.
From being a mother, we have become patient number XYZ. And in a traditional system, the dai or the community knew the name of the mother, knew how she is willed, what is the constituent, what is they leveraged on her ancestral diet, for example, to how they knew how to cater to her. Now everything has become a one package fits all. You either have a gold package, a silver package, a platinum package, you choose from that. You follow somebody else's lead who's got a certificate, who studied probably for 5 years, 7 years, 12 years at most. Somebody who's applying a certain fixed pedagogical approach that has been taught to them by the industry and applying it on all women. One rule doesn't fit everybody. You and me, let's just take you and me. Both of us eat differently, sleep differently. Our choices of partners, our choices of the clothes that we wear, everything is different, and the way our body functions is different. So how can we birth in the same way? We'll have our own distinctive anatomy, physiology, everything, and all
Mm.
that. That's not been considered in the politics of maternal health in the way it has transitioned. It's really for us to reflect and observe around what's happening, what is happening to our bodies, who is deciding for us.
Mm.
Is it a hospital? Is it the pharma industry? Is it the state? You know, who decides which supplements to be prescribed? Which company will make those supplements? and what should a mother eat. There's also, of course, the larger politics of food security. Because
Mm.
we no longer have access to clean food, everything, thanks to the Green Revolution, our food has been completely polluted. So we either have to resort to supplements. So it's everything is so intricately interconnected that we can't break one from the other.
Mm. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
so
On the aspects of certificates and the government taking a stake into the births of women and the pharmaceutical company taking a stake because the certificates, how they are being given, studies have changed. And that is because a lot of protocols from the government for India are different, internationally different, and collectively together, like WHO or other organizations, and then pharmaceutical companies again playing a role in it. How does someone who's listening to this, just like the two of us, understand where do they take a stake in her birth?
I'll address the point of certificates.
Mm.
There's no law in India which says that a woman cannot birth at home. It's not illegal, it's not unconstitutional. A woman is well within her rights to choose where she wants to birth. It could be at an institution run by the allopathic system, it could be an institution run by the more traditional midwifery model, or it could be at home, assisted, unassisted. The law is with the women. And even on the government forms. So if one is a home birthing mother and one goes to the municipal cooperation office to get a birth certificate for a child. And I say birth certificate because that's the only way to basically prove that you exist. And that's the first document that a human being makes for oneself. So if you go to the corporation as a home birthing person to fill out a form for the birth certificate, the first question that the form has is, where did you birth? At an institution, A institution, B home. Now we did the same thing. We birthed our second child at home, and my husband had to run around for getting the birth certificate. Now the people who function in the system, for them, home birth was unheard of, and the number of challenges that my husband had to go through just to get a little certificate, which is super easy if one follows the format of the process that is given by the government. It's rather easy. However, people didn't make it easier because one, the perception that, okay, so where do you stay, what is your qualification, and when they got to know that both of us have a PhD, they said, oh, how can you be so irresponsible? You know who does home birth? It's villagers, it's slum dwellers. A very, very classist, regressive, and unhealthy understanding of what home birth is and who does it. Also demeaning to a huge section of society.
Mm.
So when people found out that we are highly educated and we have done it, how do they then negotiate with us? Because they cannot talk to us in a demeaning way, in the way that they speak to person from the slum coming. Our negotiating power is also different than somebody like that because we know our rights and we know where to draw the line. Yet they have to fulfill their jobs, but they don't want to because we have challenged their idea of what birth should be like. The process was so made so complicated for us. It जो एक दिन में मिलना चाहिए था, it took us over 10-15 days, and we were very clear that we will go through the bullying of the institution. We will not pay bribe no matter what, even if it's like sliding 1,000 rupees to one of the officials. हम वो नहीं करेंगे. We will not bribe. We will go through the bullying. We will negotiate with them. If needed, we will file a case in the court after we cleared all the legal pathways. Finally, when the lady who was supposed to give us just sign on the certificate and give it to us, she asked him another 100 questions. And when he answered each one of them, she said, okay, then I need to see a photo of the baby. So we said, as we are informing that we have had a child, you're well within your rights to come home and verify if the birth has in fact happened. You can do that. We were aware of this part of the law also, that it's the job officer to come home and check and verify. But of course, they don't want to do that. It adds on to their workload. So then she said, no, no, show me photos and videos. And when he did, she said, oh, this ये बच्चा तो बहुत मस्त है, तो बहुत healthy है, mother भी बहुत healthy है. So he was like, what are you imagining home birth to be? What is it in your imagination that you cannot come to terms with the fact that a mother and child can be healthy? And that's actually the norm. They can be, unless there's something that has to go wrong, it will go wrong anywhere. So the moral of the story was that how the state, one, is showing its authority over a family which has, out of complete choice, taken responsibility of their own lives. We are not here trying to blame anybody, but all we are saying in our little act is that we are responsible for our bodies and our life and our living and our dying. And this whole system of governance is built in a way that it's demotivating, clearly demotivating women from making choices, women, husbands, families. Now, in the same scenario, if a person is birthing in a hospital, be it a vaginal birth or a cesarean section, before a woman is even taken in, the family or the husband has to sign in so many papers. And the essence of all those papers is that if something untoward happens, which is very, very likely in a medicalized system, it happens all the time, we are not responsible. For me personally, to trust somebody who is not willing to take responsibility but is willing to take everything else away from me, money is insignificant in this process. I'll be willing to sell my kidney and pay you if you take responsibility for what it is that you're saying that you believe in. Now, that is power dynamics. Now, a woman who is completely brainwashed and conditioned into believing that this is the format of my pregnancy and these are the people I'm entrusting myself for this beautiful event of my life, probably that becomes the norm for her. अच्छा ऐसा ही है. And we don't have the network or support system around birth in families. Um, and our inner strength, our inner knowing is anyway repressed. So politics therefore plays a huge, huge role, and there's so much stake clearly for everyone in it. And the stakes are a result of greed. So what I would say is, we are all intelligent creatures, and we can draw the linkages. What are not just hospitals, not just insurance companies, not just the pharmaceutical, but I'm sure there are other micro actors also in the middle, agents of change, as they call themselves. To for us to observe and to understand who's doing what. Don't just go by what is being said to you. Even the media, Divya, that they have a huge role to play, and the kind of irresponsible journalism that is played out is abysmal. But it's there, and uh, so what all do we fight? Instead of that, we just take ownership and responsibility of our life and do what needs to be done for ourselves.
When you say that, what all do we fight? Especially in pregnancy and birth, it's not a place for us to start fighting because that's the place where we need support. We're already, as women, very strong, yet vulnerable. As we all are vulnerable in every day. You know, something happens, I'm vulnerable in a situation, in another, I'm completely strong, but strength is within me, yet I'm vulnerable. Because, yes, the social aspect, the cultural aspect of how somebody is viewing a sort of birth does play into our decisions. Like the officer who was to give you a birth certificate, her um, judgment of a home birth as risky, or there must be some issue with the mother or the baby that they did not decide to go to the hospital. So that is this is where journalism must have played in. And when you spoke about journalism, how home birth, one mishap, again, wrong, not really mishap, but if something, um, maybe
Generally not
death,
acceptable.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. If there is a death, if there is a complication that runs out in a home birth, and it does in the hospitals all the time, it is quickly in the newspapers, line out, or in big titles shown as risky, irresponsible. Those are the words that are chosen very carefully to assign to that experience. I've done my own reading into how what all happens in hospital births. There was a case where a baby, a live baby, was kept in a polythene, thought that the baby was dead, and handed over to parents for, yeah, for burial, yeah. And the parents saw that the baby was alive. This is so inhuman. This clearly tells us how each one of us are treated as a number, like you said in the beginning. And for every participant in as a support system for you, either at a hospital or a midwifery led unit or at home, is going to bring in their notions about birth. And power dynamics there will play out. And then this does impact the decisions very early on for women. What decisions do they make? They maybe internally want to birth at home. That's what sounds logical to them. But the power dynamics at home pushes them towards the hospital. What would you suggest women in certain situations to be able to build their case? Now, this is something that I see that we are not doing as women in our own houses, building our case, because it's so much of fighting again. If not the government, if not the larger at the macro level, it's so much at the micro level. It begins right there for us. So, how do you think women can build their case? What resources they can use? What all they can do to build their case if they want to, for how they want to birth, whatever choice they want to make. Maybe it's for a midwifery led unit against a conventional hospital.
I'll give a very generic answer to this. It's a fabulous question. But I would say it's a matter of practice, of learning to know and write and speak your terms. These are not conditions, like in terms and conditions. There's no condition, there's only terms. These are my terms, be it in your family, be it with your partner, be it with anybody. And that's a fabulous positive exercise in understanding ourselves. It's not about the other party or the other stakeholders, it's only about us. So, uh, learn to ask in everyday life and living what you want, what you need. Uh, Now, the repercussions of this could be immense also, from being discarded as a difficult woman. And that's also a choice you're making, therefore. But once you know to set your terms, that will kind of replicate into all, or it'll snowball into all other aspects of life and living, including birth. Uh, so, if you know that the hospital is the space where you want to birth, choose your care provider wisely. Choose somebody who is at least willing to talk to you, listen to you, allow you to have a birth plan. And not somebody who does it just for the heck of getting a client or a patient, but somebody who means it, somebody who you can be referred to you by somebody who's already experienced a good birth with an obstetric gynac, for example. Uh, that will help. Now, it's a process. It's again, like I said in the previous two podcasts, it's an internal process that you have to go through to have these outward benefits. And it counts. It counts a lot. So, And every time you feel like it's not working, you are allowed to change the care provider, the up until the last moment, your care provider, the other tools that you have at hand to birth effectively in the right ways. This is something we don't allow ourselves the permission to change, and then we are guilt tripped when we do that. It's like you're shopping for obstetrics. ऐसे नहीं होता है. Uh, Once you choose an obstetrician, you stick to that person. No, no. Who made that rule? If I'm not comfortable, I'm allowed to change. Even during my labor, I'm allowed to say stop. Choose somebody else. Although it's difficult, I know that it's not something practical for women to do. But for as long as you can, give yourself permission to change your decisions about everything and anything when it comes to your body. So that would be my only advice, that uh, process things, learn to set terms, and allow yourself to change. Give yourself permission to change. The journey is about how you learn to negotiate. It's teaching. It's happening to you because it's teaching you certain lessons, and these lessons are also political. These lessons are also about how you navigate your society, your culture, your family, everything. So use those life lessons that pregnancy and the child that's coming to you is bringing to you.
I love that this is a process. And herein, the aspect of choice brings to me the aspect of virtue. Women are often told when they want to have a normal birth, when they start asking questions. And this is a very common phrase. Arey, why are you so obsessed about having a normal birth? That is immediately brings down the confidence. You look like this, or you are on the heavier side of the weight. Giving you a chance at birth is not practical. You are a certain height. So, the aspect of choice and then sticking to your vision, how does one do that? And then the aspect of virtue, how does that play into it all?
Yeah, yeah. This does ring a bell from uh, an experience that I had with um, uh, someone who asked me uh, when I was pregnant for the first time. This is, of course, a man who got to, who we told that okay, we are pregnant, and his immediate answer was, "अच्छा तो cesarean ही करोगे ना, easily हो जाएगा." And I was baffled at the ease with which he said it, and I responded saying, "No, no, how can you assume something like that? I would rather have a, I would do it at home and not allow my body to be intruded like that." And the conversation went on, in which I realized that one way of doing it is seen as better than the other. And of course, like you said, Divya, I think the first time I read your message on the group that we are in, you said we all see the world from our own tainted glasses. And it's true. However, when one signals, like you said, virtue, and this whole process where I probably think the whole idea of being virtuous stems from a religious grounding. That's my that's my hypothesis or thesis. Each one of us is trying to demonstrate the goodness of our choices. We are seeking validation, probably from the archetypes that we are of, let's say, a good girl or a good boy, which is a deeply flawed process, especially in something as primal as birthing. If you are obsessed, if that is what you are seeking, virtue, then I think there's a problem. Just because I'm a home birthing mother, I am better than a mother who chose to go to a hospital. This is the correct way, the only way. No. We are lucky to live in a time and age where we have multiple modalities. Uh, of course, the politics and the power structure and the dynamics of it is problematic. Definitely, definitely. I mean, that's the only way I can answer your question, Divya, of virtue and this whole concept of virtue signaling, which is so relevant, that we are saying that we are holier than thou just because we are a home birthing mother, or even the other way around, just because we are choosing institution, there's no universal right way to do it. Each family, each woman should be allowed to do what she needs to do, even to the extent that we can choose multiple modalities at the same time. I can choose to go to an obstetric or go for scans throughout my pregnancy, and I can, in labor and birth, choose to do it at home without anybody. There are multiple modalities one can use. That's when it will actually liberate us as a society, I think, opening up possibilities to everything and anything, that as long as we are not hurting or harming anyone with our choices, of course.
That's such a deep and profound thought. And you said liberation, that's where my eyes lit. When you were speaking, I could see that we are all caged by our definitions of life and identity of us. Our identities, right, are our identities, and that gives us the right fuel to to just be, to just be alive. At the same time, giving us the power to change makes the dynamic so beautiful that then you are not seeking virtue, then you are liberated enough to change. And while you were speaking, the aspect of women who choose to have a home birth but for some reason had to transfer to a hospital, then they are living with the same trauma of where did I make the wrong choice, or was the choice wrong, or so many questions. And yeah, and then trapping ourselves into what's the best, and I couldn't do the best. And then when we are able to do something in a very subtle fashion to see ourselves as better than others, and I'm sure I must have been there as well in certain respects. Um, but that's a great lesson, and something to practice and be conscious and be aware of without needing to explain our choices. That just brings us to a place where we don't have to explain our choices of whether or not we wish to take a scan. If our intuition says, okay, I do want to take this one scan, that doesn't make me party with the allopathic system. If, even if at the same time I don't agree with the hospital system, I can still use it. Because,
There should be space for dialogue.
yeah,
There should be space for us to always say that this works, this doesn't work. That doesn't mean that we are shunning doctors. It's the system that's problematic. And there are certain human beings who have chosen to be uh, functionaries of those systems, and they don't know better. That's the only problem. The problem is not that they are bad people. They are taught in the limitations of the framework that allopathy operates within. So you have to be aware that these are another set of human beings who only know these set of, this is their paradigm. But you create your own paradigm, and you see how does this paradigm complement mine, and how can we, to what extent can we work together, and where do I draw the line? You don't let that paradigm dictate you just because it has become dominant generally in society. We need to understand what our strengths are. That helps us draw the line, that helps us surrender ourselves in the process, that also helps us understand. Yes, this brings me to the point of taking control of our bodies that we spoke about. So let's go back again in history to the politics of the women's rights movement, where from suffrage, from asking for the rights to step out and vote and elect in democracy, to everything else around it, the various movements, first wave, second wave, third wave, current wave, everything, everyone has essentially spoken about taking control of our bodies. Now, even in this movement, what happens when it comes to birth? Why are we then telling women that stop taking control of your body, surrender to this system who knows better than what you know? Don't believe in your own physiology. Just go and birth in an institution. So I want to ask again people to ask themselves. I don't want to ask anyone anything, but I want to ask people to ask themselves, what do we mean then by taking control of our bodies? And this probably applies to not just to women, but even men and even other, when beyond birth, other aspects of life and living and illnesses. How do you take control of your bodies? This reminds me of a beautiful, beautiful movie because we spoke of media and women and birth. There's this beautiful movie by one of my favorite actresses, Vanessa Kirby. You must have seen it, Divya. I don't know. Pieces of a Woman.
No, I haven't, and that makes me want to see it.
Okay, you must. It is the premise of the movie itself begins with this couple choosing to birth at home, the midwife helping them, and the baby passing away a few minutes after birth. And it's a slow, enriching journey, and the process that the woman goes through of denial, acceptance, rage, hurt, and eventually coming around and embracing what the journey meant for her as an individual. And one of those rare movies which talks about so many different layers of what a human being is, how our relationships are, how it changes, how the mother wound impacts our life and living, how the presence, absence of a father. It's so intricate, it's so well made. It's, of course, talking about an American woman, uh, but there's truths in it which can be taken by women from across the world.
Yeah. I guess at the end of the day, even with different structures, the politics with women somewhere converges. And it just seems like, oh, that's my story. That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I am confused when I have to think about making that decision, and how do I perceive this particular situation? How do I get my identity back in certain situations where we are pushed to see ourselves differently? That's where the hurt comes in. Therein it brings me to fathers. And you spoke about how fathers also need to make choices for themselves, make autonomous choices for their bodies and their children therein. Uh, And then the role of fathers in birth. And we've been speaking about it in the last podcast. We spoke about how it's a woman's arena culturally, it was always a woman's arena. Men were around, in and around, to help in when they were needed, when they were to run an errand, get something, um, you know. And at the same time, I do believe and feel, and even for my own birth, I feel when I do have a home birth, I would maybe want him at certain times just to um, have him as a sense of safety. Um, but at the same time, I do know that there would be, if certain aspects of him play out, which is very natural, I may want to get him out of the
Stop
room.
him. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
it's very fluid that ways, but we still need fathers, and at the same time, they have a role to play, which is theirs and which is not in the woman's
Hmm.
space. So, what do you feel? How do you feel about that? And
So, for me, it was a non negotiable that my husband has to be with me the first time during my birth. The first person I need to say this to is my husband because I need to ask him. For me, it was important that I have his consent. And I remember him saying, because I decided to have a home birth, and although he was supportive, he also was scared, I'm sure. And it's normal and natural to be scared to venture into something that one has never experienced. So he said in Hindi that मैं तो बेहोश हो जाऊंगा अगर ऐसा कुछ देखता हूँ. So I said ठीक है बेहोश पड़े रहना but उसी रूम में रहना. stay in the room with me, lie unconscious, I don't care, but I need to see you or have you around. Of course, he never turned unconscious, and he did a fantastic job. But we co-created that journey together. In the first time, of course, I can't speak for him. What fatherhood and what being a husband to a pregnant woman in the first time was, or what it was for him in postpartum, because postpartum is not just about the woman, especially when it's a setup like ours, uh, where it's just us nurturing the baby. Postpartum happens for both of us. Of course, with the woman, it's more hormonal, physical, it's so many layers. But there's also a postpartum journey for fathers, and there are people who talk about postpartum uh, issues with fathers, but that's again something I think should be left to fathers and men to speak about. There should be a voice for fathers. What has their experience of birth been like? What is their experience of negotiating with institutions or various stakeholders that they have come across? Be it family, it starts with family. Negotiating, for instance, I know with family to stand up in support of their wives. And there's this natural politics or power dynamics that comes in when mothers-in-laws, sisters-in-laws, sisters are all involved in the decision making. So this man becomes kind of the provider. So if men are able to do that, I think that's the highest level of masculinity and secure masculinity that they're able to demonstrate to their partners. um, and then to be able to talk about it in your personal spaces, in public spaces, if you have the opportunity to do that. Tell your story. Don't talk about, oh, this is what happened to my wife, this is what she did, let her do that. Let the woman speak about her journey, her experiences. But as a man, as a husband, as a father, what did you do? How did you negotiate the challenges? What were your challenges? uh, what kind of support would you have needed as a father, as a man, to navigate pregnancy and postpartum in your capacity? And my experience is mostly men talking about women and their experiences. Please don't do that. I urge men to stop talking for women. uh, Speak about your journeys. That will truly enrich what it means to be in a husband wife relationship, because uh, as opposed to what we are taught or conditioned by various systems, it's not men versus women. It's a plot set up set up out there to disempower both men and women. The system knows that we are stronger together, and it's best that we stay stronger together. And we can only do that when we speak honestly about our journeys without, again, it's problem the problematizing aspect of it is the intellect. And if we are able to discard that layer when we are doing something together as deep as pregnancy, as birth, then we are able to really dig deeper and talk about things that matter. Because it's also a journey, an opportunity for men to transition from, let's say, boyhood to manhood. The process of pregnancy, starting from sex, uh, creating that baby, and then giving birth, and then raising that child. So if you're getting that opportunity, I think embrace it. Yeah. Am I making sense?
Oh, tremendous sense. I want you to go on.
So what's happening in the politics of birth and maternity is, again, from family to institution, all spaces, socially, culturally, politically, uh, is that all our fears are being capitalized. So I'm not defaming money. I love money. I would say that money is fantastic. I'm saying that it's the problem of greed and capitalizing on our fears, which is the problem. You can make money without making people afraid. You can empower people and make money. So, in this politics of creating a fear instilled system, I think men can do a fantastic job of holding space and operate from their natural inner uh, guidance, which makes them protectors of whatever it is that they are is their core. And yeah, yeah, there's so much they can do,
Yeah, and there's
except
so
for
much.
speaking for the woman. Yeah,
Or in so many respects that I've come across of late is
yeah,
speaking for the woman, not just in terms of events, in terms of her feelings. This is where I feel it's
mm,
absolutely
yeah,
not okay, because feelings are so fluid. Even when I say I was this, I may be still trying to talk about the little branches of that particular feeling. That feeling is happy, but I was not just happy. It wasn't just a single branch. It had those little branches wherein other feelings came in. So I think when it comes to feelings, how a woman felt during labor and birth, even with people around her, how a woman felt in a hospital, how a woman felt anywhere in her life when it comes to parenting, how she feels.
yeah,
That's her space to speak about her experiences, and I love that you brought it up. Her space to speak for herself and also make sure that she doesn't end up speaking for the husband. I personally believe that. As much as I love that, I love that when people are talking and bringing in their lives in little hints, and that helps me support the families better, but
yeah,
also maintaining that personal boundaries between a husband and wife. And I definitely think that I would not want my husband in certain situations to speak about me or us also in a when it comes to my own family, my relations, in the gatherings of our families. I don't want him. Even our friends, which are common friends, I don't want him. At the same time, I may have stepped crossed the boundary, crossed the line when I spoke about him, and he has, in fact, in certain um, places, situations, told me, I don't like you talk about me. I would rather, or about us, because I have a
yeah,
different narrative about us as well.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
yeah, so I've been asked not to, and am thankful that I've been
yeah,
asked not to, very politely, very nicely, which is again not mean. I don't say that very politely when I say that to my husband.
mm,
So again, for nurturing each other with these little coming back, and then having those personal and professional, even boundaries in relationships as deep as a man and a woman, and that
mm-hmm,
helps in places like birth, wherein you may not want your husband to make
yeah,
certain decisions for you, where you would just want him to listen to you and what you say, do that, then use his own mind sometimes and make that decision, because then that
yeah,
choice impacts her
yeah,
process of birth, because she's the one who's birthing. Definitely she is the
yeah,
center, she is the one who is the goddess, and somebody who can give that space to the woman. Everybody, in fact, not just husband, everybody who can give that space to the woman, that she's the goddess,
yeah,
she's the one who's birthing, and she needs to be here. It doesn't
yeah,
take away from me, or it doesn't take
yeah,
away from anybody, not even the doctor. um so wrong when the doctor feels okay when the woman is powerful enough to
yeah,
how the training has been, that the woman will take away something from me because I have
mm,
to do something, because I've been called into this birth to do something. But maybe you've
right.
not been called into this birth to do anything
Anything. Yeah,
to support the woman.
yeah.
Yeah,
That as you speak, I'm also reminded that as easy as it sounds, it's also utopian for a majority of women to have that kind of support from a man.
absolutely. Yeah,
Uh, for me, it's easy, or rather, it is not easy, but I've made it that way because I'm as an individual inaccessible to anybody beyond my husband and kids. So in my second time around, I knew that I was alone. I was alone. I had prepared my pregnancy plan and my postpartum with the idea that this time it's completely me by myself, and I was ready for that also. So what I'm trying to say is to women is, if you have a solid partner in your husband as a birthing partner, great. It's it's a fantastic opportunity for you to build a relationship together. But despite asking, if you don't have that, don't get disheartened. Grieve, probably cry, do what your body is asking you to do, uh, but don't stop believing or doubting yourself that you are not enough. If you're alone, you will get the resources that you need. Just ask different people. You're asking your husband and crying and not getting it is not going to help us, and I've learned it the hard way. um, so if you're not getting what you're seeking, ask somebody else. It could be an absolute stranger who could empower you or liberate you far better than the people who you assumed or imagined would be around you or for you. So it's better that we don't live in utopian imaginations of that we create for ourselves. That kind of uh, hampers us, our own growth.
You speak about us being very individual in this life. When we are aware of that subconsciously and also aware of how much we need other people, it it does play out differently. And yes, again, like you said, it's
Yeah,
hard work. I'm
it's hard.
sure it must
Yes.
have been hard work for you too. You in the beginning, and eventually it did become easier with time. But it is hard to take that one step. But when the rewards come in along with the pain, we realize what we need.
Yeah. This reminds me of, shared this with you. I want to share it again, about how somebody, an elder woman in the family, told me that, you know, making this decision and having everything work out for you is luck. She must have said it with the intent of meaning that in a complimenting way, perhaps. But to me, it just took away from all the work that I had done. It was demeaning. Uh, it felt like, of course, there's nothing to respond to such a statement that, all this happened because it's sheer luck. No, it's my hard work, it's my conviction, it's also my belief. Transferring all of that work and giving luck the benefit, it takes away from my me everything that I do. So yeah, we have to be very aware of what allow we consume what we consume in terms of what people are telling us. So that's why this inaccessibility is so important for me, because the moment you access me, you also feel like you are free to say anything or do anything with, like, unsolicited advice or statements. I'm saying this to span it out across to women, that have your terms set, because this is also politics what happened. So this dynamics also creates a lot of other emotional turmoil. Our culture is great and all that, but it's also, you know, what
Wounded.
I mean.
Women are
Yeah,
wounded, and then it
wounded.
does. Yeah, it
Yeah, it
does.
passes on
Mm.
generationally.
And especially in birth, where women inherently are feel the individuality because it at this time they are the creators. They have been put on a pedestal by nature,
Right.
um, and that's when everybody, when they have their own definitions and meanings and have their own ways of pulling you down, very subtle. It's just that, it's like you are tied to those threads, and then everybody, you're in the center and everybody is around the circle, and everybody thinks, okay, I can pull you in this direction because I think I'll keep you safe. Maybe I'll pull you in this direction, and everybody comes in, your doctors, your family, your social structure, your friends, the stories you hear and are not able to cut off, the people you're not able to tell that, okay, don't tell me that horror story, don't tell me so much happened in a normal birth, so you're only
Yeah.
hinting that my choices are bad. and what
Yeah.
you did for yourself or what your choices are are great. Again, virtue signaling is in every
Yes.
single
Yes.
relationship, whether
Yes.
it's glorifying cesarean section because you had it, whether it's glorifying normal birth, whether it's glorifying your pain over someone else's pain. I love that word that you brought in, virtue. And
Yeah.
you immediately know in your body and your heart that you're being pulled
Mm.
into someone else's periphery, wherein you want to have that power and you don't want to give people threads, but like the thread that can easily pull you, that they
Yeah.
they have that
You want
loop
to be a
around
puppet,
you.
no?
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to
You
be a
want to be a
puppet.
puppet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's somebody else's game and you don't want to play it. Or even if you're playing, you should know to play it on your terms.
Hmm.
That's the key. What are your
Yeah.
terms to life
Yeah.
and living?
Yeah.
For instance, I'll bring in an example of the beautiful placenta, Divya. है ना? So when I gave birth the first time around, I didn't know better, for a lack of a better word. Because I didn't know better, what happened was we knew that after the placenta's birth, we're not gonna cut the cord. We're gonna leave it and we let the pulsating to stop, and then we will cut it. So it took the whole day, and by the end of the 12th hour is when Rahul cut the cord. And at that time, we had a beautiful nurse named Binsi who worked with Birth Village, and she explained to us, look, your placenta looks like a heart. This is how the baby must have been positioned. This is where it has torn. This is how from where she came out, and all the aspects of the placenta. Then she very kindly asked us, do you want to take it home? What do you want to do with it? And what am I going to do with it? I didn't know better. And just a day after, I got to know that I could have taken it home. I could have given the placenta its due, respecting it and putting it back, giving it back to the soil. I had my grandfather's ancestral home around, just put it in the soil and planted a tree in my child's name. And then, of course, I also found out that I could have just left the placenta with my child and let it detach itself in the next coming week. It could take 2 days or a week or up to 10 days to detach itself and let the child be with the home that it was growing in the last 10 moons. The second time around, I was more conscious in my body, knowing that, okay, the placenta is going to I'm going to birth the placenta, not just my child, but also the placenta. And
You've created
the
both.
placenta, yes, and the placenta is my baby's home. It has what has kept it alive, given her the home that it needed, the safe home that it needed inside my womb. And I was very conscious of the fact that the placenta is not a medical byproduct. So we did not cut the cord this time around. We let it stay with Mira, and uh, the placenta and the baby detached on the fourth night after the birth. It was beautiful to experience that. She cried differently that night, but she had healed. Her navel had healed completely, and that's when the cord decided to let go of her. Now, there are various terminologies used for it, the process. I don't want to get into that because words are really a marketing gimmick. That's how I also see it. So, the placenta discarding, and then we, of course, conserved it with soils and essential oils, and now it's in the freezer waiting for the monsoons because I'm gonna sow it, give it back to the earth, do what, um, extend my gratitude to it, and plant a tree as I intended to previously also. Now, my question through this medium that you're offering me, Divya, is, and I urge women to ask this question when they birth: where is my placenta? Can you give it to me after the birth? I need to take this home. Am I allowed to? Of course, there's nothing that stops you from having access to your own body part. So ask these questions. Go within, understand the physiology and the anatomy of birth. This whole ritual of conserving the placenta, it stems from cultural practices of hundreds and thousands of years, no? And we have been disconnected from it. very consciously. There's a methodological process which has people are not even aware of it anymore. And I
No,
didn't know that my ancestors did it. Not beyond, not very many years ago. It's hardly, I'm
a
probably the
few
third or fourth
decades.
generation, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that that has become so unaware of what my culture offer had so much richness to offer to me.
yeah. So you do imagine yourself in the middle of that circle where everybody is there, your support system when it comes to birth. And know that you do have a choice. You're still at the center. You're at the center because
Yeah,
you've been given this gift of being at the center for this
yeah,
process for pregnancy, birth, and having your baby. You're the mother,
yeah,
and all that your feelings lead you to, they have a
yeah,
meaning. They're not just obsessions or feelings,
yeah,
or you are not naive enough to make choices, and someone does not know better than you.
yeah,
Pregnancy, birth, and motherhood does give you that natural intellect. You have it in your DNA. It hasn't come from anywhere. You don't have to have it's in your DNA. So even
yeah.
while you spoke about bringing placenta home and preserving it in your refrigerator, if you live in a setup where people might frown upon that, then you will have to prepare everybody in the beginning
Right.
for your choices, and you're still a valid member of the family. You're
Yeah.
very much a valid member of the family, and you're the one who bring who's creating the baby and the life. So, so Sanjana, we've already covered most of the politics and social, cultural aspects of birth from a very telescopic view. When it comes to our lives deep down, how does that look like in our lives? Now, if we go back at a macro level, there are so many schemes that the government keeps bringing. There are so many protocols, so many rules that the hospitals follow. For example, you cannot go beyond 40 weeks, etc., etc. How does those schemes impact someone's birth?
I'll give you one example of how our bodies become political. The color of our skin, the texture of our hair, the sex we are born with, जिसको gender बोलते हैं, our abilities, our disabilities, our very existence is political. Our names. In terms of governance and the impact of governance and politics in birth, let's take the example of the Janani Suraksha Yojana, for instance. It's been a scheme that's been running for the past many decades, where women are given a certain monetary incentive to go and birth in a hospital, or in a PHC if they are in rural areas or in semi-urban places. And women will choose it, especially women coming from the lower caste, lower classes, um, lower middle classes also, despite probably knowing what's the risk in going to a place like that. They might be comfortable birthing at home. This is what I have come to understand after speaking to hundreds of women actually, at least in Maharashtra and the places that I've been. And they know that there's a definitive push towards institutional birth. The intent might be good, one doesn't know, but it's not really doing what it needs to do. It's just institutionalizing birth and not giving women any other options. So, therefore, the state comes in very, very directly, and even the people who are implementing these schemes and policies, from the ASHA workers to the PHC ka doctor to people in the villages, like the people, the communities, let's say the influence of the panchayat on the woman's body. Arey, you have to do this because this is what will benefit you and the family. Because if you do this, you will get X amount of money in your bank account and it will only help you all, because that small amount, no matter how small it is huge for that family. So yes, that's just one example. So we can actually go on and think about hundreds of examples of how state influences and uh, comes into our lives on a daily basis. But that's for your listeners to think about. Now I leave it
Mm,
at that. Yeah.
mm, yeah, 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 great. So very much in the same frame about government influencing birth with their policies, protocols. And then when it comes to parenthood, there are so many schemes when it comes to our education system, when it comes to our, say, how we eat, where we source our food from. So, what do you think? How does all of this politics again play into our little lives when it comes to parenthood, when it comes to how we source our food?
Hmm. That will be an interesting topic, no? Politics of parenting. Yeah, thank you for that question, Divya. So let's again go back to these rules that where are these coming from? Uh, so my understanding is that we all operate, think, and function from our social, cultural, political conditioning, which happens through various sources together with media and the kind of education that we pursue in mainstream schools and colleges and universities. And we pursue them so diligently that it does not allow us free thought. And thinking is hard work, you know. So the ability to think beyond what is told to us um, is not allowed, or we stick to thinking what is comfortable for us. And we find comfort in our identities, in being of a particular community, of a particular caste, of a particular religion, region, or let's say nation. And our identities are all tied to these. This is how we tend to organize ourselves in our daily lives. And we experience these categories from the day we are born. And therefore, we believe that we are these characters belonging to these categories. We accept them to be true as is told to us. Now, for me, I chose discernment as a way of life because I've come to accept that we don't have to stick to any beliefs that have been instilled into us from our parents, our relatives, our friends. And we don't have to stick to the imagination of who we were raised to be. And I, as a child, was always influenced by open farmlands. I knew that in my heart that I wanted to be around free, in a free space where animals are free and in their element, where I can be in my element grounded. And that was always my push for my parents. Just even when I remember 6 years old, I remember telling my parents that we had visited this place called Karjat. And that time it was heaven, absolute heaven. And I remember telling them, just buy a piece of land, I will be happy to farm. I want to farm and live. And as a child, I had this tendency to rescue these little kittens or puppies, even in the city, and bring them home. And then my mother would blatantly push them out. So I always felt that I could do these things more easily and in free terms when I'm out in the open. But of course, life goes on, and my parents, because they're urban dwellers, it never happened. But as I grew up, I more and more had this calling towards now what is called regeneration, in the broader term. And when I turned 30 and I was working again in Berlin, I we had discussed this, me and Rahul, many many years ago, that this is what I want to do, and we decided ki ठीक है retire होके we'll buy a land and settle there. And then at 30, he was like, "What? We don't even know if we'll be alive or retiring. Let's just do it now." And that's when our search began to buy a small piece of uh, land where we can build for ourselves. That was the initial intent. Grow our food. And we had, by the time I had realized that there are hundreds and thousands of people doing it right from the 80s and living like that. Also building movements around it. So we didn't have that intent in the beginning, although we come from a training like social work and community development, rural development, all of that. But my initial push was this is for me, and this is what I'm going to leave behind for my. I'm going to be a decent ancestor and leave behind, a better world for my kids and for society and for community. So that's how we started this little project called Beejvan, where our core lies in seed saving, in regenerating groundwater levels, in securing food and nutrition security for us and as well as for the community that we live by. So right now we are actually building this. We are in year 3 of recreating, regenerating a native forest in Maharashtra, and that plays a huge role in how I operate. It's also helped me transition. You cannot show ego or any such farcical identity or category with nature. Nature sees you as just another element in that the cyclical balance that it works with, and it's helped me ground. And we are learning every day. When a plant which is we have nurtured for the last 2 years, it dies, it feels bad, but we realize that okay, it's eventually survival of the fittest. That's the lesson that we are learning from this. We'll try our best to save it, give it water, shade, enough sun, enough natural fertilizers or whatever that it needs, but eventually it's up to the plant. It's the plant's journey. So yeah, that's I think that's my also my calling in life. Therefore, that I want to look, sit, observe, slow down. Um, and last time when I said I love money, I also keep telling everyone that if people give me money, all I'm going to do is buy more land and plant more trees and just do that for the rest of my life. I enjoy that. I enjoy that so much because I know that in a few years the urbanization dream is going to take over the whole country, and we're not going to find soil, which is where our food comes from, which is where
Yeah.
our nutrition and nourishment comes from. And with everything else taking over the soil, concretization, deforestation, we might not even have the native nourishing food, that whatever little is left for us, we might not have the seeds. So I think seed saving is a very primordial activity, which I
Understand from seed saving, it is those indigenous seeds that you're saving.
yes. We can
That's
only
lovely.
save those because the multinational company manufactured seeds are all, for example, the BT or the GM uh,
Hmm.
seeds. You can't save them. It's a one-time thing, and therefore it's unsustainable. So what happened previously is farmers used to grow from the seeds that they're from the previous years and then save some for the next year. So the seeds are resilient. They are full of nutrition, they are healthy, and then we have the solid. You're not dependent on purchasing seeds, so money isn't a factor.
Hmm.
Now everything relies around the money economy,
Money, yeah. That's
and
how it has been built, right? The government then interferes. There are policies, again, there are protocols that we are bringing these hybrid seeds to grow these sort of foods. Our food is changing at the soil level, and we aren't even aware. And then the same food comes in the same shape, but it's different. It doesn't have that nutritional dense um, quality, or it has a different quality that we've been raised on. And again, there is a clear disconnect between how our bodies acclimatized to the food that we were nurtured with all this while that came from the soil real. And thankfully in India we were working very indigenously just a few decades ago, and now all this is changing. So it does worry me now for our children if not all of us go back to bringing, growing our own food, or somebody like you having it for a complete community wherein other people can source it from. It's going to be very difficult to become healthy.
yeah. And the beauty of a project like this is that I don't believe that they should be upscaled beyond a limit. For instance, if you're
Hmm.
working in a village, it can go up to the Gram Panchayat, the Taluka at best. But it's great to have little community projects everywhere because that's how then we become truly sustainable and we thrive. Because if I'm making something here and I'm sending it off to Delhi, food, let's say food, seed, whatever, or Delhi, or if I'm becoming another big business which is scaling all the way up to the US, then again we've become the same
Quality
industry.
is, yeah, quality is lost. Hmm.
Quality is lost. We are using that much amount of fuel to transport something. So more local the better. We can of course replicate the idea. For instance, if you're doing forest based farming, tree based farming, that is something that we can all replicate in,
Hmm.
and that's how we all come to co-create, learn.
Yeah.
We're able to have opportunities for farmers to visit each other, learn from each other, and but we stick to our roots, we stick to what's native to us, we experiment with what else we can grow,
Yeah.
we learn, we teach, we pass on wisdom to our kids. And yeah, I'm glad and grateful that I'm able to do that in whatever capacity that I can,
Yeah.
and also foresee a future that's a little bit different uh, than how it would have been without this. This is actually a very, very enriching experience. And at Beejvan, we tried initially to actually get in farmers, more and more farmers, but then
Hmm.
reality hit us. And with the surge of the money economy and
Yeah.
urbanization, farmers' priorities have changed. There's still 1 in 10 farmer who is interested in farming and agriculture and all these practices, but
Right.
then what's in it for them? The question that they ask me is, how am I going to earn my livelihood? Where's the money coming from? Because if I have to educate my kids, I
Hmm.
eventually still need money to have a decent
Yeah.
house, decent
Yeah.
access to healthcare.
Right.
And yeah, so, like I was saying, we need to, because my skill set is of researching, of writing, of probably bringing in the funds, whatever little that I can for the farmers, for work to happen, to pay uh, salaries, to create employment in a format that's working for me and for the farmers. My skill is not getting into the farm. I of course do farming, but I have my limitations because that's not who I am. But I need to
Yeah.
create these parallel leaderships so that we can offer what we can best and learn at the same time. Work with leverage our strengths and let the farmers leverage theirs. Because eventually I realized that it's food and it's our lifestyle which is going to impact our health and change it for good. To conclude this part of our segment, I would say that I'm glad and grateful that we have these multiple options and modalities of health and healing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, however, none of them should be able to dictate or given the power to dictate how we live our lives, or which ones we can and cannot choose for ourselves.
Yeah.
Again, I have a question to the listener. Who decides what is science and what is pseudoscience? Who gets the right to define these things? Well, of course, stupidity, superstition, abuse, ignorance must be called out and addressed and dealt with. And the one precious thing from my own life experiences that I've realized that we own is our body. I would say don't let it be conquered by forces that you have no idea about. Let your body be, trust it. It's the most magnificent um, machine ever designed. It knows what it's doing. It's working 24/7, 365 days, even when you are not, striving to keep us healthy and alive. So um, let's learn to respect it.
Mm.
That's the premise of our journey towards healing and everything else.
Yeah. What I get from all of our conversation is every little aspect, every little node of our life is impacted by the society, the culture, again, the politics at the macro and the micro level. And when it comes to birth, when it comes to our choices in birth, it's impacted by our nourishment, our own individual health primarily, and then it is impacted by how we are treated. And sometimes these researches and how the health of the woman is starts dictating whether or not they have the ability to birth. And that's used against us because women can still birth. Nature will still evolve to its surroundings. It's an ever evolving fluid power. So we forget that even with all this, nature is evolving with us in a good way or a bad way, but the ability to give birth is still there in all of us because we still hold the ability to create. And nobody questions that, but we're questioned on our ability to birth. Then the confusion all around parenting comes in, food and nutrition for our children, because then we become far more responsible than for ourselves. When it comes to, so this is how birth changes you. When you start looking at birth from a very clear lens, all of your life comes standing in front of you, and you start looking at things more clearly and question everything that comes from a far off source. And when other people are playing their roles and stakes in it, so I am very happy we kind of touched all those notes and allowed that space for our listeners to see the flow, to see where our lives are all connected, and birth becomes the primary source. For me as a woman, it has been a primary place where I could then see life very differently from all that I was taught in my school, in college, in jobs, etc.
I want to add to that, Divya. Um, may I?
Of course.
Yeah. So I'll go back to something which was the premise of everything, is something that Reba told me, and I would want to attribute this sentence to her, which has remained with me because Reba is also somebody who is my healer. I work with her whenever I need her, and I'm very grateful for her in my life. She said that the whole point of the birth journey is less about the birth itself than it is a truth journey. So, what I understood is that the experiences and realizations and pains, fears, our insecurities, everything that comes up during that process, it is designed to enable us to be more and more progressively true to ourselves, to see ourselves and to accept ourselves the way we are, and to also accept change and that we are designed to evolve. And that's really the paradigm shift to it changed my life. And I see truth in that statement that birth is really not about the birth, but about the truth journey that we are undertaking. And if we are able to get that from birth, I think we have hit, uh, it's masterstroke. So I'll use the metaphor of the allegory of the caves that this philosopher named Plato has used to define or to understand human beings, uh, where he says that we are all imprisoned by our in our own cave of existence, our own questions, our beliefs. I think that's what I was trying to explore throughout our podcast to this time. Everything is so impermanent and temporary, and as a philosopher, I don't know, as a social scientist, or just as somebody who's having this opportunity to speak, even if one little tiny aspect of someone's life is impacted, or I've helped you come out of that cave, I'll be very very happy. And it's also a journey where I have come out of my own caves as I've spoken, and this last 3 weeks that we have explored these questions together, I've thoroughly enjoyed, and it's definitely had a wonderful impact on my own life. So I'm very grateful to you, Divya,
Me
for
too.
what you do. Yeah. And I also feel like this is one wonderful uh, platform, and you're reimagining activism with so much empathy for everyone, every single person or activity or actor involved in these processes. That this is how I feel that change will happen, one person at a time, one mother, one father, one family, one unit at a time. So, thank you for doing what you are doing. I'm so glad I chose to speak to you.
Touch wood. Thank you. And I really wish that people are impacted, influenced in a good way, and change does come in. In a lot of ways, I've learned from you, Sanjana, all these 3 weeks. And I said that to you when we were talking on phone, when we were just discussing what else can we cover. And it's been a beautiful 3 weeks. And again, although lives are fragile, relationships are fragile, I hope we continue on and off if that's how it is.
Yeah. That's the premise where we ought to work from. I told you, I always tell
Yeah,
some of the closest friends that this is how it is now and it's fantastic, but we never know how our relationship is going to be.
yeah. And that's true. There's truth in it. Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Sanjana, for sharing your story, for sharing your wisdom on in here, for sharing your understanding of life and helping others see through your lens. And hopefully, they are able to clear their own and to see the world the way they want to see it. So thank you so much. I'm really glad that we did
Thank
it.
you,
Thank you.
Vidya.
There is a field beyond fear, where the body is empowered to take on labor and birth. To land there, it is crucial to take birth education. To enroll into our unique labor and birth preparation course, reach out to us at www.birthagni.com or scroll through all available prenatal and postnatal preparation classes. Thank you for listening, all in the spirit of birth, womanhood, and freedom. Remember, you got the power. This podcast is about physiological birth and does not offer or claim to provide medical knowledge or diagnosis. Starting a podcast with poor recording tools in the market? It was painful until I found Zencaster. Its high quality audio and video recording, along with the option of a backup, makes it super sturdy and a savior at times. With an easy to use dashboard and super convenient tools for advertising campaigns such as reels and videos, Zencaster is my comfort choice. Go to zencaster.com/pricing and use my code BIRTHAGNI, BIRTHAGNI, and you will get 30% off of your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. You may also explore their free hobbyist plan to begin with.